Church attendance is declining. Many are asking why. Why is the Christian church, so important in the lives of many in the past, on the wane today? What is the role of organized religion in the 20th century? Why are so many finding their faith irrelevant and unsatisfying? Thoughtful, caring Christians are asking these very questions. Varying solutions are proposed to stop, or at least slow down, the trend to a more secular society. Feeling that their differences are really quite minor, large denominations have sought merger with other sects. Yet at the same time, the rift between the modernist and fundamentalist branches of Christendom continues to grow. Televangelism reaches out to millions using the very latest in communication tools. Coordinated attempts have been made to affect government and infuse a moral agenda into the platforms of political parties. Despite sincere and intensive efforts, the Christian church faces a crisis of credibility. There is no doubt but that the churches of our day have changed considerably from those of 100 years ago. Doctrinal sermons have given way to a social gospel and commentary on current political situations. Camp meetings and revivals have given way to televangelism. Carnivals and bingo parties are used in order to obtain finances for large social projects. Dances, bowling groups, and rock bands have all been used to appeal to the younger generation. Yes, many changes have been made, but have these changes been for the good? What is the present mission of the church? How should the church function in this fast-paced life of the computer generation? These are the questions which will be addressed in our story today, as we listen in on a couple who are troubled by what they see transpiring in their church. Perhaps you can identify with them.
My, you look gloomy, Peter. How did the service go this morning?
Mary, I'm still troubled by the same thoughts. I know it may be all my fault. And I know that the church is one of the great bastions of civilization. But I just can't seem to relate to the messages I get each week.
Well, apparently you're not the only one. According to the latest polls, many people are having essentially the same experience that you've been having. And in some areas, church attendance has fallen off.
You know, what you say is very interesting, Mary, because it doesn't apply to a particular denomination. Whatever it is, it's affecting all the churches. I know that there are other people who are just as troubled as I am. Here I've invested my whole life in the church, and something isn't working out right.
You know, Peter, I read not long ago that a noted author expressed his opinion that the dwindling in church attendance was the widespread disapproval of the general tendency of the clergy to preach their sermons on affairs of government rather than preaching the gospel.
Sermons about government or other world affairs just send me home with an empty feeling.
But that is known today as the social gospel.
It's not the gospel of the Bible as we used to hear it.
Well, you know, Peter, we are living in an age of progress. Perhaps our problem is that we haven't been able to make the adjustment to the fact that the churches should progress with the times. Do you think we could just be a couple of squares?
All right, maybe we are. But I feel that our beliefs should be grounded in the Bible. And the Bible is the same as it always has been.
But isn't it possible that our understanding of the Bible should progress?
All right, I'll grant you that, Mary. But I have a feeling that my emptiness these days is simply because I don't hear about the Bible. Nobody wants to talk about the Bible anymore. The Bible is old-fashioned. It doesn't apply to our changing times.
Yes, I know. And even though that thinking is more prevalent among younger people than others, it still bothers me.
Mary, the young people of the world today are going to be running the world tomorrow.
Oh, yes. Oh, but what we're saying doesn't apply to all young people, Peter. Oh, I'm sure there are many, many youngsters who are trying to build their lives on the standards set down by the church and who still feel that the Bible is the main guidebook to moral standards.
Well, maybe. You know something, Mary? I have worried enough for one day.
All right. Let's eat.
All right.
Mr. Fay, I believe.
Right.
Won't you meet Mr. Albright and just make yourself comfortable? You'll have a few minutes to wait. Mr. Brown is behind schedule this morning.
Are you from out of town?
Yeah, good old San Francisco.
Oh, really? I was in San Francisco once. I attended a church conference there.
You're interested in the church?
Well, I go every Sunday. And you?
Yes, I'm particularly interested in Bible study.
You like to talk about the Bible?
I guess I could say I'd rather talk about the Bible than any other subject I know of.
Well, we seem to have something in common. But you know, Mr. Fay, I've been very discouraged for the last couple of months. I don't know, maybe it's my fault, but to tell you the truth, I just don't seem to be getting the joy out of my religious life the way I used to.
I'm sure there's a good reason for it, but of course we couldn't discuss it in this setting.
No, I you going to be in town overnight?
Yes, I have a dinner engagement. After that, I'm free.
Why don't you come out to my home? And you can meet my wife, and we'll discuss the Bible together. Let me check with my wife first, but if you'll give me your number, I'll call you later.
It's 434-8375. However, in case we can't get together, I always carry a booklet with me about the Bible. You read this and your wife with your Bible. You'll enjoy it.
The church. Well, thank you very much.
Peter?
Oh, Mary.
You have a good day today? Oh, listen, I'm sorry, but dinner's going to be a little bit late. I was detained at my club
That
meeting.
is all right, Mary. Listen, I am so excited about something that happened to me today.
Huh?
You won't believe this, but I met a man who was actually willing to talk about religion, and especially the Bible. I told him my feelings, and he was very sympathetic. He really wanted to help.
And I suppose he had all the answers.
Oh, no. No, he wasn't that kind of a man at all. He did like to talk. Well, of course, under the circumstances, we didn't have much time for discussion, but he did give me this booklet, and he suggested we study it together with the Bible.
Church. Doesn't every church member know what the church is?
Well, you would think so, but there are so many denominational groups. There must be more to learn about the subject.
You may be right. After all, it was only yesterday when we were wondering why so many people are leaving the church.
You just read that little booklet and see if it's interesting to you.
There are many churches bearing a great variety of names and holding to many shades of belief with respect to the teachings of Jesus and his apostles. When we consider these differences of viewpoint, it is not out of order, we think, to inquire as to what the church really is and what the divine purpose is concerning it. Is there any way of knowing which is the true church? Or do all the denominational groups together make up the true church?
Well, that's a very logical start. Very good questions asked there.
Yes, especially this one about what is the true church. You know, Peter, if we knew the answer to that, it might help us with answers to many other questions.
And then there's the one about the divine purpose concerning the church. If we knew the answer to that, we might know a lot more about what's going on in the religious world of today.
Well, Peter, listen to this. It's something we know already, but it's said so clearly here. The church is not a building, although the word church is used to denote the place where a congregation meets. If the expression meeting house were more universally used to describe the gathering place of a congregation, it might help to lessen some of the misunderstanding which prevails concerning the true significance of the word church itself.
Now, that's interesting. Because actually, you see, yesterday I didn't go to church at all. I went to a building where church people gather.
Oh, Peter, this booklet gives them the meaning of the word church. It's a translation of a Greek word which appeared in the New Testament, and it means, literally translated, a calling out.
A calling out? What does that imply?
Well, it says here that it means a calling out from the world to follow Jesus. It says that Jesus said to his disciples, "I have chosen you out of the world."
Well, Mary, do you think that means that God isn't trying to gather in the whole world to the church?
Well, listen to this, Peter. In the early days of Christianity, each group of believers, regardless of its size and location, was considered a church. And indeed it was a church, because each such assembly of believers was made up of those who, by the gospel, had been called to separate themselves from the world and to follow in the footsteps of Jesus.
You know, when I was riding home on the bus, I glanced through that booklet, and I was very interested to learn that the early believers often met in private homes. Well, there weren't any cathedrals then or elaborate meeting houses.
Yes, and you know, I was reading just the other day that of the thousands of people who are leaving the church, many of them are holding meetings in private homes. You know, maybe that's not such a bad thing if it's what was done in the early church.
Mary, the man who gave me this, he's still in town. And I talked with him about coming over and discussing with us. And I took his telephone number and I said I'd check with you first. What do you say we call him?
Fine.
Well, won't you sit down, Mr. Fay?
Call me Ed if you don't mind.
All right, Ed. And how did your day go for you?
Oh, just so. So, as you know, it's a hectic world in which we're living, and it seems that everybody has problems. And at times it's difficult to ride above these and get on with one's business.
Yes, I know what you mean. And I guess it probably isn't really fair to ask you out to discuss religious problems.
I'm never happier than when I'm discussing the truths of the Bible and how they relate to us and to our service of the Lord.
And I was saying to Mary earlier how pleased I was to meet somebody who seems to enjoy discussing religion.
I think it's wonderful, too. I'm sure we'll have a very interesting evening. You see, lately, Peter and I haven't been very happy in our Christian life, and, well, who knows, you may have the answers.
Well, let's hope that we can be a help to each other.
You know, Mary and I have been reading that booklet you gave us about the church. And with your help, we'd like to pursue that line of thought a little further.
I'd like to talk more about that Bible text at the beginning of the booklet, where Jesus says to Peter, "Thou art Peter, and upon this rock will I build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it."
Yes, that text is a little strange, Ed. We've been taught to believe that Jesus is the great foundation stone of the church.
Well, actually, he is. Jesus is both the head and the foundation of his church. The Apostle Paul wrote, "Other foundation can no man lay than that which is laid, which is Christ Jesus." The Apostle Paul also wrote that the church is built upon the foundation of the apostles and prophets, Jesus Christ himself being the chief cornerstone. And Peter affirmed that Jesus is the chief cornerstone of the church.
Would you say then, Ed, that Peter and Paul were disagreeing with Jesus when he said that Peter was the foundation stone of the church?
Not at all. You see, in that text, Jesus used two different Greek words for rock. The Greek word translated Peter is one which means a piece of rock or a pebble. But when Jesus said, "Upon this rock I will build my church," he used a word which means a mass of rock, or a great boulder, as it were.
Well, I never realized that before. But then, why did Jesus say, "Upon this rock I will build my church"? What is referred to by the word "this," if it doesn't refer to Peter?
Well, Peter just said to Jesus, "Thou art the Christ," or the Messiah, the Son of the living God. Jesus was pleased with this confession. We might paraphrase his reply to Peter in order to get a little clearer meaning. Jesus said, "Peter, your name means that you're a small piece of rock or a pebble, as it were. But by comparison with the meaning of your name, the great fact of my messiahship, that I am the Son of God, is as a great massive rock, a great boulder, and the church will be built upon this great truth."
That's interesting, but Jesus also said that the gates of hell would not prevail against the church. Now, what did he imply by that?
I understand what that means. I think it was simply Jesus' way of reassuring Peter that no injury would be done against his church.
I know it's very comforting to believe that nothing will go wrong within the church, but I think Jesus' statement goes deeper than that. What did he mean, the gates of hell?
Well, this, of course, is pictorial language. The word hell here used is a translation of the Greek word Hades. This word is used in the New Testament to describe the state or condition of death. It corresponds in meaning with the Hebrew word Sheol, which is used in the Old Testament to describe death. A prophecy concerning Jesus' resurrection declares that his soul would not be left in hell or Sheol.
Do you mean to say that Jesus went to hell when he died?
Not to the traditional burning hell of the Dark Ages, but to the Bible hell, which is simply the state of death. The prophet Isaiah wrote concerning Jesus that he poured out his soul unto death, and that he gave his soul an offering for sin.
Well, that must be related to the fact that Jesus was the Redeemer of the world. Is that it?
That's right, Peter. Jesus took the sinner's place in death, which means that in God's due time, all who are in the state of death will be released or restored to life.
Ed, you've just touched on a subject that's very important to Peter and me. Some time ago, we lost our dear son through death. And we couldn't find any answers to the question why, or know what we could hope to expect for him. I became so frustrated and confused that I haven't been back to church since. And it was around the same time that Peter began to have religious problems. And now, for the first time, we've heard someone say that someday our boy will be restored to life.
I'm sure he must have been a wonderful boy. Well, I'm glad we're beginning to get to what appears to be the root of your problem.
But go on, Ed. As I understand it, all those who are in the Bible hell will not remain there forever. Is that oversimplifying the matter?
Not at all, Peter. In the first chapter of Revelation, and in the 18th verse, we find Jesus saying, "I am he that liveth and was dead, and behold, I'm alive forevermore, and have the keys of death and hell."
Jesus has the keys to hell. Well, now, traditionally we've been taught that the devil has the keys to hell.
But that's wrong. You see, Peter, Jesus' statement concerning the keys of hell suggests the other symbolism which he used, that is, the gates of hell.
Oh, I understand that. If there are keys, then there must be doors or gates. And Jesus possesses the keys which will open the gates of hell or death. Is that right?
Exactly, Mary.
As I remember it, Ed, Jesus said to Peter that the gates of hell would not prevail against the church. Now, what does that mean?
Well, as you probably discovered from your reading of the booklet, the word church itself means a called-out class. That is, called out from the world to be associated with Jesus in the outworking of the divine plan. While Jesus is the world's Redeemer, the Bible also teaches that his church will be associated with him in restoring the world to life. Remember, Christ or Messiah is not one member, but many, the Apostle Paul wrote.
Now, Ed, you say that the church will be associated with Jesus in fulfilling his divine purpose in the earth. But what is that divine purpose? I'd like very much to know, and I'm sure Peter would.
Well, more than 4,000 years ago, God made a promise that he intended to bless all the families of the earth through the seed of Abraham. in the New Testament, it identifies Jesus as this promised seed and also reveals that his church will be associated with him as that promised seed.
Well, then you're saying that God's divine purpose is to bless all the families of the earth.
Well, I don't understand that. You say that God has promised to bless all the families of the earth over 4,000 years ago, but that promise has not yet been fulfilled. And in the meantime, people have been dying without that blessing. Even our own dear son went to death without that promised blessing. Well, I don't get it.
But your reasoning, Mary, has brought us closer to the point. As I've already mentioned, the Bible teaches that because Jesus was raised from the dead, all mankind will be raised from the dead, because it says, as in Adam all die, even so in Christ shall all be made alive.
Is that thought related in some way to the keys of hell, the gates of hell?
Very directly related. Jesus will use those symbolic keys to unlock the gates of hell and set death's prisoners free.
But then what did he mean when he said the gates of hell will not prevail against his church?
Remember, Mary, the whole world of mankind have been in the great prison house of death. And also, beginning with the apostles and all the other faithful ones of the church, when each of them go to sleep in death, they also enter that great prison house, which the Bible calls Hades or hell or the death condition.
Then the divine purpose of these is to be associated with Jesus in the blessing of all the families of the earth?
That's right. And that means, you see, that they, or the church themselves, will have to be released from death. But the gates of hell will have to be opened for them. This is referred to in the 20th chapter of Revelation as the first resurrection. The promise there given is that they shall come forth in the first resurrection to live and reign with Christ 1,000 years. And it'll be during that 1,000-year reign of Christ and his church that the remainder of the dead world of mankind will be awakened from death and receive the promised blessings of life, everlasting life, if they obey the laws of that new kingdom.
Well, that's very reassuring. But will they be restored here on earth as humans?
That's right. Man was created to live on the earth, and the earth was created to be man's home forever.
Wait a minute, Ed. Are you saying that the whole idea of going to heaven, that idea is wrong?
Oh, no, not at all. There are many heavenly promises in the Bible, and these are very precious promises indeed. But these promises are made to the faithful followers of Jesus, not to the whole world of mankind. It is not God's plan to transfer the whole human race to another abode. But it is God's plan to exalt members of the true church to heavenly glory to reign with Christ for the blessing of the remainder of mankind to human perfection and life here on the earth.
You know, Ed, I used to read my Bible more than I have of late. And I remember the promises, very descriptive, about peace and prosperity and health and life right here on earth. And I could never quite make it harmonize with, let's say, what Jesus said to his disciples. I go to prepare a place for you, but I will come again and gather you in to myself. But now, somehow, with your understanding, it harmonizes very well if it's understood properly.
Ed, you use the expression, the true church. Which of all the various denominations do you consider the true church?
Just about to ask that myself.
The true church of Christ is made up of individuals who have dedicated their all to the Lord's service and are faithfully laying down their lives walking in the footsteps of Jesus. The Lord alone knows who these are. If we aspire to be members of the true church, then our responsibility is to make sure that we are faithfully laying down our lives in divine service as Jesus did.
Well, thank you for that answer, Ed. That's helped me more than you can know. I have been desperate, despairing, and despondent. because I've been over-concerned about what others do, whereas I should have been looking into my own heart and into my own life to make sure that I was walking the straight and narrow.
What Peter says is true. And then we were upset by the loss of our son, and that added to the confusion and discouragement.
I hope you won't misunderstand when I say that basic to your problems, you've been leaving the Lord out of your reasoning. There's so many in the world today who seem to think that they have to carry out the Lord's plan for him. Oh, they don't say it in just so many words like that, but the thought is there, and then when things go wrong, a problem is presented.
Well, you have analyzed my thinking very well, Ed.
The greatest joy that could come to anyone in his endeavor to serve the Lord is to realize that God's plan for his human creatures is working out according to his will, and that the end result will be glorious.
Doesn't the story sound familiar? Christianity, designed to light the way for all mankind, seems to have lost its sense of direction. The Christian is God's representative in the earth. As Jesus said, "As the Father hath sent me, so send I you." But what does he want his sent ones to do? We invite you to study deeper into this subject with the free booklet, The Church. This treatise examines in detail the biblical role of the church. With your Bible in hand, probe the part that Jesus desired his followers to play in the world in which they lived. Search the Scriptures to find a new and living faith. Become involved as an active Christian in being a witness to the truths of the Scriptures. Live a life that will be an epistle to all around you.
To view the booklet online, visit www.dawnbible.com, or to receive a hard copy of the booklet by mail, send us your name and postal mailing address and ask for the booklet by name. The title of the booklet for this program is The Church. Send an email to dawnbible@aol.com. The booklet will be mailed to you free and without obligation. And now, goodbye, and may God bless you.